I would like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us in this working group meeting after quite a long time, organized in the framework of the DARIAH open meetings. And thanks Francesca personally and Eliza and the whole team for making this for us possible. It's important that we communicate. For the friends that haven't been familiar with our work or are new and interested, I might very briefly make a short introduction. So in our working group, we have developed a model for existing thesauri to become interoperable and be maintained in a sustainable and scalable way. This model is designed as a coherent overarching thesaurus for the humanities, a backbone or a meta-thesaurus. We call it BBT for short, under which specially thesauri and structured vocabularies used across scholarly communities can be integrated in a form of a thesaurus federation. So what is actually the backbone thesaurus? One could say that it is a faceted classification scheme that enables intersubjective and interdisciplinary classification, development, and integration. We aim at allowing access, compatibility, and comparison across the heterogeneous classification systems and enhances collaboration across the various humanities fields without forcing researchers to abandon their own terminology. So, if one could summarize in bullets, the BBT is a meta-thesaurus for humanities research data that provides interoperability for local thesauri. It offers top-level concepts, facets, and hierarchies that serve as a common ground for thesaurus building. It has a logical, clear, and consistent structure and it promotes objectivity and interdisciplinarity. It enables cross-disciplinary resource discovery. It ensures compatibility with thesauri that cover highly specialized scientific domains and areas of knowledge and development. And finally, it provides potential for the sustainable and manageable expansion of thesauri into new areas of knowledge. But then, why in the first place did we felt we needed to tackle this issue concerning controlled vocabularies and thesauri and build a meta-thesaurus? It is common ground in the field of thesauri maintenance. Might it be persons or most often institutions that they hold documents and artifacts and data concerning the same thing but they don't often communicate with their classifications, with the classification systems they have developed for. So one needs to combine different often and in institutions that have a long period of activity, one needs to combine different terminology and often different logic that might have been applied over the years for the same, the very same thing. To make it have a sense, you need to use a meta-thesaurus. We propose the model that we have constructed that allows the one logic, the different logics to talk to each other and detect where you have overlaps. So it is quite often, moreover, that each field develops its own system of classification so that it is impossible to have access to all the information related to a user's query or to map the information from different fields in such a way that the same word will be used to denote the same meaning. So the aim was to ameliorate the functionality of this thesauri that institutions and thesauri maintainers hold, in order to make them sustainable, consistent, and interdisciplinary, with the use of our model, the BBT model, and the benefits of the faceted searching that it offers. Key point to this discussion and the problems tackled, as I mentioned before, is information retrieval, of course, and key issues on that and major problems are accuracy to retrieve the meaning, and only that I seek, specificity to have the results that I seek, and comprehensiveness, all the results that I seek. So if we go further to a bit describing very shortly the principles and the method we followed, we would say that the BBT model and the relations we have developed between the terms are hierarchically as there is an extensive use of intentional properties, of course. We have a small number of top-level concepts that cover the needs for humanities and art thesauri. We adopted a bottom-up collaborative approach. The top-level concepts are developed by abstraction from existing vocabularies, initially from the Humanities Thesaurus and onwards from other vocabularies like the die, the frantic, and other holders that joined us. The ontology-driven faceted analysis has led to the definition of 10 facets. The facets, these facets, at least which are 10 to this day, are further subdivided into an open number of hierarchies, and so far we have defined 20 hierarchies in the BBT. And under this small set of concepts and top terms, narrow terms from different thesauri can be effectively subsumed, provide a comprehensive first level of integration of terminologies. In this slide, you can see the facets and the hierarchies to the BBT up till now. The 10 facets comprising activities, natural processes, types of epochs, roles, groups and collectivities, geopolitical units, material things, mobile objects, materials, conceptual objects, and geometric extents. I will briefly inform you also on our recent activities during the COVID time, and just before that, we tried to maintain our connection, even if we and our work in line, even if we had to change the ways we collaborate as the pandemic imposed to all of us. So at first hand, the focus has been on curation and the activation of the Thesaurus, of the BackBone Thesaurus Curation Committee. We thoroughly, and I might say sometimes exhaustively, discussed on the structure of the BBT. We updated content, performed editorial work. We conducted translations for the BBT facets, hierarchies, top terms, and scope notes. And we established the curation committee face-to-face annual meetings and conducted the first one in Athens just before the outbreak of this new condition in our lives, in order to be able to collaborate not only via the tools that my colleague Eleni Tseloucha will elaborate on, but also to have a workshop and live collaboration on the issues we raise during the year and gathered in the framework of the BBTalk tool that we will elaborate a bit later. the past 12 or so months, we focused on our users' experience. Despite the difficulties, we conducted interviews with our users, and we tried to sort of evaluate the way that our model is useful, where are its weaknesses, where are its strengths, why it helps or not people, in order to be able to make adjustments and develop new functionalities. This users experience video production was part of the participation of the working groups in the DARIAH virtual annual event in 2020. You can see you can find it in the YouTube link here. And against all odds and all the difficult conditions, a new partner joined our BBT Federation, the language of bindings Thesaurus. And of course, last but certainly not least, we released 4 versions of the BBT model during this approximately 2 years that I've been referring to. Alas, I will not be pleasant at the end. During the last summer, our working group suffered the loss of a dear colleague and an important group member, Evelyn Senegalia from Frantic. Her loss, as sudden as it may have been, filled us with grief, and allow me to say a few words about Evelyn, and to end with a 2-minute video from her interview where she describes the usefulness of the work we perform in the BBT. So Evelyn has joined the library of the Fondation des Maisons des Sciences de l'Homme in Paris, where she started the career, and then she joined the archaeology library of the Maison Archéologique et Ethnologie Nanterre. She was enthusiastically involved in the Frantic network, of which she has been deputy director for 2 years. For a long time, she led the working group on the Untitled Thesaurus. Interested in linguistics and the construction of specialized vocabulary for several years, she continued her work on the reorganization of the BBTalk's working group of the BBTalk's Thesaurus, and these interests and these activities has led us to contact the BBT and gradually become very much involved, becoming a member of the curation committee and providing the BBT model with all the French translations of the facets, the top terms, and the scope notes. I think that I speak on behalf of the whole community of our research community. She will be sorely missed. You can find more material for our work on our website, and of course BBT and the Connected Thesauri are published in the DARIAH vocabs service maintained by the Austrian Center for Digital Humanities. And I will pass directly the word to my colleague from ICS 4th, Eleni Chouloucha, who will elaborate on the BBT Federation, the service for connecting and managing Thesauri. Eleni?
Thank you. Let me just share screen.
I stop sharing.
Yeah. So presentation mode. So just my presentation in presentation mode.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank
Elena.
you. So yeah, I will be talking to you about the BBT Federation of Thesauri. And let me start. The use of multiple thesauri across multiple databases and systems involves the mapping of the terms and the design of methods to use those terms in indexing and retrieval. Given the large number of thesauri in use across research fields, this amounts to a massive task. An economical solution is to work in a federated environment where specialist thesauri are mediated by a small set of well-defined generic concepts that can be used to browse for documents, objects, publications, whatnot of interest. In such an implementation, specialist thesauri retain their autonomy and continue to be managed independently, thus reducing the cost of maintaining the whole infrastructure. Furthermore, mappings from individual thesauri to this mediating structure permit end users to query multiple resources at once, using the same terms as they always have. So this sort of implementation is shown in this diagram, representing the BBT Federation of Thesauri. The BBT Federation of Thesauri relies on a generic classification scheme, namely the BackBone Thesaurus. And the purpose is, the aim is that the top level concepts of BBT, the facets and the hierarchy, serve as hooks where to map thesauri branches in order to create semantically consistent hierarchies. I will not be talking so much about the BBT itself because Helen mentioned quite a lot of it in her presentation. But what I will be talking about instead is the BBTalk and BBT-Browser tools on which the BBT Federation of Thesauri runs. So BBTalk serves to integrate thesauri with the BBT and permits curating teams to interact with the purpose of modifying it or extending it. And the BBT-Browser permits users to browse the federated resources for connected vocabularies. Specifically, BBTalk is a software component used as an alignment tool by local thesauri maintainers, permitting them to link and publish the thesauri through the BBT federated system. It also serves as a communication system, supporting discussions between the curators of the BBT and other users concerning the management of the BBT. By clicking on the link here, like BackBone Thesaurus EU/BBTalk, the end users are transferred. Are transferred to the BBTalk environment, where after they've logged on, they can navigate through the submissions tab, where it's actually the proposals for changes and updates to the content of the BBT, and the connections implemented with other thesauri. Assuming that parts of the thesaurus do not integrate well with BBT, a proposal to introduce a new facet or a new term may be put forth by the person implementing the mapping. Aside proposing new terms, and users can propose to split or otherwise modify the BBT facets and terms, and or even actually request for facets and hierarchies to be deleted, merged, or otherwise modified. The decision to implement or reject a proposal is reached following the workflow on the diagram here. Specifically, an end user of the BBTalk proposes to, let's say, introduce a new term, acting as a contributor. The BBT curators evaluate this proposal, and either they accept it and implement it, or they reject it because it doesn't purport something necessary to express through the BBT, or they modify it following discussions among them and the person who made the proposal, and then just put it through a vote. And in principle, of course, before a proposal gets accepted or rejected, it can undergo a drastic makeover. And last but not least, if there's no way to resolve an issue or a conflict due to either lack of expertise or due to some curators maintaining one position versus others maintaining a completely incompatible one, they can also ask for expert opinion to a reviewer. Moving on to the BBT-Browser, once we've finished with the linking process, the federated thesauri can be searched together. And the browsing of the interconnections is supported by the BBT-Browser, which is a cross-vocabulary browser. And a brief description of what we see here on the screen. On the left-hand side, for instance, we see the facets of the BBT and some hierarchies within activities. By clicking on the term disciplines here, we can see all the relevant information of the terms tab, such as its place in the hierarchy, definition scope note, some examples in the form of a note, so its translations in French, German, and Greek, its URI, and also we can see the terms that have been mapped to it from other thesauri, either exactly matching concepts such as disciplines from the Humanities and Thesaurus, or narrow matching concepts such as paleography by Frantic, Pactols. So by clicking on either of them, we are transported to the corresponding system, where we can see like narrower terms, translations, hierarchies, or other relevant information. That's for the Humanities Thesaurus, and that's for Pactols in OpenThesaur. At the moment, the thesauri and the vocabularies that have been connected to the BBT are the Humanities Thesaurus, which has been developed by the Academy of Athens, the IDA Thesaurus, which has been developed by the German Archaeological Institute, the micro-thesaurus, well, part of the micro-thesaurus Sujet by Pactols of Frantic. The vocabulary is used and managed by the EU project Parthenos, part of the general multilingual environmental thesaurus, which has been used as a proof of concept and an exercise of sorts, and the language of binding thesaurus, a thesaurus containing terms relevant for bookbinding and conservation studies. So that's where we've left off, and that sums up my presentation. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you, Lenny.
Pass on the baton to Ellen.
Thank you, Lenny. We're just in time to ask from the participants if there are any questions, comments. I don't see anything on the chat yet. Any issues that you want to clarify, since after ending our short presentations, Eleni and I, we presented to the extent possible all the functionalities and the logic between our endeavor and the BBT. Are there any questions, comments, unclarified issues? Okay, in that case, sorry about that. Okay, in that case, we will move on to our next session, our next set of presentations of 4 speakers that will present, the 3 of them actually, the way that they have encountered the BBT model. 2 of them have worked on that, and Bruno Almeida from the ROSSIO infrastructure has worked on mapping when developing their own vocabularies in the ROSSIO infrastructure. So I'm very glad to move on to Blandine Nouvelle. Blandine is Blandine's background comes from archaeology, but also information sciences. She is currently responsible for engineering documentary resources at the Centre Camille Julien Research Laboratory in the archaeology in Aix-en-Provence. And she's particularly interested in the questions of standardization and the structuring of metadata. This led her to launch the program of reorganization of the BBT Thesaurus, and she will be delivering on the using of the BBT as a filter for the reorganizing of the BBT Thesaurus. Blandine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will share my screen. Here it is. So good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to see you all, and I will thank Hélène for tribute to Evelyn, and thanks the others for your kind messages. So I won't introduce myself because Hélène has done it yet. So in this presentation, I would like to show you the original way in which Frantic uses the DARIAH BackBone Thesaurus to help reorganize its BBT Thesaurus. So Frantic is a federation of 45 French research centers belonging to the CNRS, universities and local authorities. All are involved in archaeological research. Among the tools we have developed since 1985, this is the BBT Thesaurus. So, okay, this is a control vocabulary that covers all fields of archaeology from prehistory to the present day and classic studies. It is organized in 6 eponymous collections and constitutes a unique repository for multilingual concepts. Its access is open and free, and it is managed with the Open Thesaurus software. It is in compliance with ISO standard and SCOS. It is polyhierarchic, citable using ORG, and under free license. Its lexical richness and normative qualities have made it an essential resource for the construction of open and interoperable resources for French archaeology. It is used by libraries, publishers, data producers, and for the promotion of archaeological heritage. Despite continuous updates, its structure has not evolved since its creation, and it had organizational defaults which made it difficult to manage, particularly when new concepts are added. In addition, its lexicon was incomplete, or certain subjects and sometimes outdated. This is a problem, and with Evelyn and all a small team, we therefore launched a reorganization program, which was supported by the MASA consortium in France. And this program aims to consolidate its structure, in particular conformity with the SCOS language, and to enrich the vocabulary in partnership with experts in the various fields of archaeology. In our project, the discovery of the BBT was like magical. Indeed, at first we had tried to revise the Thesaurus collection by focusing on the subject 1, but the aim was to simplify the branches and make them more readable. But we were not satisfied and wanted a more radical transformation. So the BBT was the solution. Its conceptual categories allowed us to consider a different approach to our collections. The limited number of hierarchical levels offered us a model of simplicity in display and better visibility of the topics covered by BBTalk. Its similarity to the CDOC CRM ontology met the objectives of interoperability and openness to other data repository. Scalable and collaborative, we decided to participate to its updates. We therefore decided to use the BBT as a filter, like Elena said, to redesigning the Pactals collection. We have created a temporary tree with the BBT facets in the Open Thesaurus software with a copy of the Pactals Thesaurus, and we named it Pactals 2. Then we distributed each concept in the BBT structure field by field, starting with a subject collection. This forced us to correct structural inconsistencies and confusion in the branches. We have reviewed the meaning of some concepts with particular attention to definition and translation. In the end, this is an opportunity to update the whole vocabulary, which was one of the aims of the program. And in that game of deconstruction and reconstruction, let's take the example of the death file. In the original Pactal, the death file included 133 concepts in 8 sub-branches. Distribution of the terms was prepared in a shared document with the BBT categories completed if necessary with additional hierarchic levels. Once validated, that tree was entered in the Pactals 2 until the death tree was emptied. The concept of death hierarchy are now divided among 5 new categories and 11 new subdivisions, which are better integrated into the other domain of the thesaurus. The revision process put an emphasis on the vocabulary. Outdated terms were either renamed or merged, sometimes deprecated, and definitions were updated with recent bibliographic resource. The revision of certain terms will lead us to the future to correct the indexing of frantic collective catalog to keep the connection with the Thesaurus Pactals. And we have worked under the control of funerary archaeologists and anthropologists, eager to be involved in the creation of a terminology they had been trying to formalize for many years. What is the situation with 8 months to go before the delivery of the version 2? Concerning the date of the concepts, there are still 800 concepts to be processed out of the original 6,800 in the subject section. So the work is going on. We have increased the number of definitions to 75%. Added variants to the labels, created links with concepts of the other branches and collection, created 2,500 new concepts and deprecated 140 concepts. And of course, all Pactals collections are ultimately impacted. Concerning the structure, we disperse the largest categories among more accessible files, thus limiting the depth of 5 levels when they were up to 11 in the first Pactals, with the introduction of facets. That is very new for us. This will provide a more direct access to the content. And we also add approximately 50 new top terms, merging current Pactals micro-thesauri and BBT facets. This will eliminate the 6 former Pactals micro-thesauri and introduce the new categories, agent buildings, chronology, etc., etc. We started to customize headings in clear and understandable language for all our users and make sure that we keep track of the equivalent files and subfiles to the BBT facets and pseudo-theorem classes. Here I show you an example with the category material things. of which we retain only level 2 and 3 by rearranging them. And I have to inform you that we are now almost ready to finish the mapping to the vectors to the BBT. So I'm done, and I thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you, Blandine.
I have a question. I will just
for sharing with us the huge reconstruction work you've been performing within the BBT Thesaurus. And I would like, let me see, are there any questions in the chat? I do not see any. Are there any responses, questions, or comments on Blandine's presentation? We have a couple of minutes to take one or two questions or comments or anything that you feel you would like to add or respond or ask Blandine before moving to the next speaker. No reaction. Hopefully we will discuss certainly after the other three participants present their projects and their work. And I will move on to another member of the curation committee. I start by this affiliation for Camilla Colombi, which of course is a scientific referentin in the Deutsches Archäologisches Institut in the Rome department. As I mentioned before, she also is member of the BBT curation committee, and apart from her education and background in classical archaeology and the Etruscs in the Mediterranean, South Italy in the Mediterranean, she also is heavily involved on the deployment of the IDAL Thesaurus of the DAI Institute. So I give her the floor, and she will explain us how the IDAL World Thesaurus and the BBT help them shaping an archaeological classification system. Camilla.
Thank you, Helen, and good morning. I will now share my screen. So I hope you can see my presentation with all the logos. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak about the experience of the German Archaeological Institute with the BackBone Thesaurus. So the German Archaeological Institute, DAI, operates and supports research in the archaeological sciences and classical studies and has several departments worldwide. His history goes back to the year 1829, when the Istituto di Corrispondenza Archeologica was founded in Rome. And so do thesauri and vocabularies for the indexing of books also have a very long tradition at this institute. The first classification system goes back to the year 1836. The so-called Realkatalog was a hierarchical system of subject indexing used in the first library of the Instituto in Rome. With the constant growth in a number of publications and the foundation of new departments, the need for a more detailed classification arose. So
I'm sorry for interrupting,
yes.
Camilla. Could you put your screen on a presentation mode, because
Is it not?
participants are notifying that they cannot see us. That would be perfect if you could enlarge it. So
wait, maybe it's the... Let's try this.
If you have double screens, you have to change the screens.
Yes. Let's try this. No.
That's where it should be done from. So maybe if you press it again.
But you see my my screen, not the presentation. Is it correct?
No,
Yes,
it's
just
click,
like very small.
Camilla, click the Bildungspräsentation.
Yes, but the presentation starts on the other monitor.
Right,
Right, I will
you
try
have two
this
monitors.
one.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry.
there is this.
yes.
there you
Now
go.
it's the presentation
Beautiful.
mode. Yes.
So now it's presentation
Yeah.
mode?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
Camilla,
thank you very
super.
much. It was the other monitor, so.
Okay, we got it.
So I was here. Yes, so at the end, just what I wanted to say, very long history, and at the end, every library in the German Archaeological Institute has developed over the years their own system of classification, focusing on their spatial area of interest. And here, as a further development of this original Real catalog, the Rome department used the Thesaurus for the classical archaeology and the Mediterranean world. And here you can see the big four thesauri from the Madrid department, focused on the Iberian Peninsula, Romano-Germanic Commission in Frankfurt, European archaeology, and the Eurasia department, archaeology of Eastern Europe and Asia. As we can see, the structure and the type of the top concepts are quite different and somehow required an in-depth knowledge of the subject in order to use this thesauri. For example, as you can see in Rome, we had top concepts in various categories of archaeological objects, but also top concepts such as history, religion, or topography. The Romano-Germanic Commission, for example, had a more straightforward structure where the top concepts were structured chronologically. Just to cite two examples. Altogether, these vocabularies comprise approximately 11,000 concepts. However, most of them repeated themselves in the different thesauri or even in the same thesaurus many times. Descriptions by means of control vocabularies, however, is also used for images and archaeological objects. The most important tool at the German Archaeological Institute is the object database Arachne, a part of the digital infrastructure IDI world. The subject indexing in Arachne comprises also nearly 11,000 concepts organized in value lists, for example, vase shapes, tools, body part of statues, etc. So we have seen that we had vocabularies and thesauri in the libraries and some very big value lists in archaeological projects. In line with the globally conceived archaeology that reflects in a better way the approach of to international archaeology by the Institute, in 2015, the Institute decided to combine all these subject indexing methods and to mesh them together. So the project IDI Thesauri was born. The aim was to create an IDI World Thesaurus, subject independent, and its new thesaurus should be used as the institute for subject indexing of books, but also for editorial offices, classifying images, archival records, project and research data. So the first problem we were confronted to was obviously the broadness and the different specific structuring of the thesauri. And our challenge in order to build something that fits everyone's scientific needs was to find an overarching structure that was general enough to be understood by everyone and flexible enough to fit every concept under it. For those reasons, the project has chosen the DARIAH BackBone Thesaurus as a core structure for the new IDA Word Thesaurus, because the BBT follows a logical, easily accessible structure, contains a small number of top-level concepts, and promotes a small number of hierarchies. And it allows local thesauri to subsume its terms without abandoning specific terminology, as Ellen already pointed out. As our top concepts, we adopted the BBT facets and hierarchies. And however, we had to make some adaptations in order to fit every concept from our old thesauri into the new IDA Word Thesaurus. So like we added a facet animate being, Lebewesen, that we discussed throughoutly with the colleagues of fourth and BBT curating committee. And also our facet chronology contains actual period names. This is also something that we discussed in previous meetings. The method that we adopted for the management of the thesaurus is based on SCOS, and we use the online management tool IQVoc. Here you can see the major SCOS features such as the preferred labels, alternative labels, and the relations, close match and exact match. So as I said before, the project was launched in 2015. Up to 2019, the thesauri of the libraries were combined and mapped. And now, since 2019-2020, we are integrating the vocabularies of the IDA word systems. At the moment, we are integrating in particular this Arachne, so 11,000 terms actually, and we have approximately halfway through. The IDA Word Thesaurus now comprises approximately 6,800 terms. So we have subject-independent structure of 11 phases. 10 of them are from the BBT. Of course, not all facets are equal in size because we are an archaeological thesaurus. The facet objects is very well fed, and other facets like rows or geometric extents are much more smaller. It can be expanded to the 6th level to avoid the creation of infinite hierarchies, such as in the previous thesauri. This made it possible to slim down very much the concepts. So, for example, the word faience was present 9 times, 9 entries in the old thesauri, and now it is only once in the facet materials. Same for weapons. We had 21 entries for weapons, and now we have just 1 in the object facet. We have also the introductory definitions, which are the somewhat abbreviated and translated version of the scope notes of the BBT facets. So here is a representation of one concept. You can see for each concept, we have also an URI and possibilities to export as HTML and for link data. And this is our platform where you can browse the old thesauri, the new thesaurus, and you have now a brand new frequently asked question in Hilfe. So to sum up, I will address the challenges and advantages of this work. This was obviously not always an easy task. In terms of content, we had several problems deriving from the different research tradition of the old thesauri. And we were quite used to the structure of the old thesauri. So we had some problems sticking to, putting concept in the facets that we were not so familiar with, like roles or conceptual objects. We tended to put everything under objects, but eventually we learn to deal with that. So we also had a little problem understanding that not every facet is equally weighted, but we eventually got used to this because it is more important to create a coherent thesaurus than a good-looking one or finding fast solutions. So an actual problem now is the presence of many adjectives, such as curved or damaged, coming from the value lists of our object database, and we would like very much to discuss the topic in the coming curating committee meeting. However, we are quite happy.
Could you wrap up, because
yes.
we're exceeding. I'm sorry.
Sorry. So this is
having to play this role, but could you wrap up, please?
So this is the last slide. Don't worry. So the advantages: there's a better coherent thesaurus, nearly no repetitions. Top terms are understandable for everyone. It is a flexible structure, and we are linked to you, so thesauri of other institutions. This is a slide with who is working on it, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Camilla. With all the interruptions, our work has been thorough and long-lasting, and to comprise all this major the key points of this work, since we know it is really difficult. But now we will move on to the next speaker that I have announced, talked about a bit before, Bruno Almeida. Bruno is integrated researcher at the Nova Clunil in Portugal, and at the linguistics, this is the linguistics center, the Nova Clunil, and of course his institution and he himself participate in the project of the ROSSIO infrastructure, a digital research infrastructure and tool for social sciences, arts, and humanities. And he will be speaking on the mapping of the ROSSIO Thesaurus to the BBT and the challenges and possibilities. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Helen, for the introduction and also for inviting me to participate in this meeting. Share my screen now very quickly. Hopefully it will work. So can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. So Helen has already introduced me. I'm currently a research fellow at ROSSIO Infrastructure, where I work on the development of controlled vocabularies. And also I'm a researcher at the Linguistics Center of Nova University of Lisbon. So just to provide a little bit of context before getting into today's the topic of today's presentation, ROSSIO Infrastructure are, of course, the Portuguese representative of DARIAH, as you know. It is a research infrastructure that integrates a consortium of 7 academic and cultural heritage institutions from Portugal. The Nova School of Social Sciences and Humanities, which coordinates the consortium. There's also the Directorate General for Books, Archives and Libraries, another Directorate General, in this case for Cultural Heritage, private institution, the Carlos Gulbenkian Art Library and Archives, the National Theatre Dona Maria II, the Lisbon Municipal Archive, and the Portuguese Film Archive. So these are the institutions that make up the consortium. Besides these institutions, ROSSIO also includes the Portuguese Web Archive and the Diplomatic Institute of the Portuguese Ministry of Foreign Affairs as content providers. So ROSSIO are developing a platform at this time for facilitating the discovery of the digital collections provided by our institutions, by our partners. This platform will make use of metadata and aggregation, And it will also involve normalization and enrichment based on control vocabularies, which we are developing. The ROSSIO platform will include several services, in this case, a discovery portal, a virtual research environment, and access to curated digital exhibitions and collections. So we also have vocabulary services at ROSSIO, which are trying to develop. And these are based on 2 open source applications, very well known, VocBench 3 for the development of the vocabularies and scores, and Scosmos also, which is also used within DARIAH for user browsing and linked data access to the published vocabularies. The in-development vocabularies are accessible through the link visible here in this slide. So on to the topic, main topic of our presentation today, the ROSSIO Thesaurus. This is our central vocabulary. It consists of topics or subjects, if you will, in social sciences, arts, and humanities. Its development should extend until March next year, which is the end of the project's current funding. This thesaurus provides several functions within the platform and development. It provides terms for simple and advanced searches. It also provides subjects for indexing or describing of other vocabularies and resources produced within the platform, like the digital exhibitions and collections that our researchers are working on. And the thesaurus also allows for modeling types of agents and places and the other vocabularies. For example, in our agents vocabulary, the entry for the Dona Maria II National Theatre is linked to the theaters as institutions concept in the ROSSIO Thesaurus. So this entity is of type, let's say, theaters institutions. So these are the top-level concepts or categories, if you will, of the ROSSIO Thesaurus at this time. Very briefly, we have an agents concept, top-level concept or category. This is designed to include generic concepts regarding people, groups, organizations, and other entities, including imaginary and theoretical, mythological entities. The places concept, this includes concepts for denoting locations, which it's in a very, very generic sense of location. It includes geopolitical entities, built environment, geographical features as well. So all of these things can be construed as places in a very generic sense. We have a temporal entities concept, which aggregates activities, processes, and periods or epochs, if you will, which are usually referred to as perdurance or occurrence in ontological literature. So this is a convenient category to have. We also have a physical objects concept, which is broader in this case with regard to the BBT. It includes material objects, but it also includes substances and physical features. So materials will be within this category of physical objects. And finally, the conceptual objects concept, which includes all manner of immaterial or otherwise abstract or socially constructed objects. And you have here on the third column the indication of the sources which served as the inspiration for these categories. So the mapping process to the BBT at this time, the ROSSIO Thesaurus includes mappings to most of the BBT, top level and leaf concepts. We have at this time 24 distinct mappings in total, corresponding to 20 exact matches, 2 close matches, and also 2 broad matches. The concepts within the geometric extents facet and the roles facet are not used in the mappings at this time, with the exception of the roles top term, which I will address briefly. So it is clear that there are some different ontological choices when looking at what we are doing and how the BBT is structured. So in the ROSSIO Thesaurus, we have a more strict set of categories. This is by design. It is intended to organize concepts for most information needs in a more or less intuitive manner. And so we have concepts for types of agents, for types of places, the who, the where, for conceptual objects, for physical objects. These are the fundamental categories that will hopefully help our users with their information needs. A further difference is that we have an agents concept with generic concepts for people, groups, organizations, instead of roles. And this is a similar approach to the Getty Content Architecture Thesaurus. I believe it is also similar to what BBTalk has done with the anthroponyme category. So we also have a places concept. It is a further difference. This includes generic concepts for locations, again in this very generic sense. We have the temporal entities concept, which aggregates activities, not only natural processes, but all other kinds of processes like social processes, concepts for these sorts of entities, and periods, of course. There is a more generic understanding of physical objects within the ROSSIO Thesaurus. As I mentioned before, it includes materials or substances, as well as discrete mobile objects like artifacts and so on, and also physical features and parts or structural parts of objects like the BBT. A further difference is a more generic understanding of conceptual objects, where we place roles in this case, but also disciplines, and something that I believe is missing from the BBT, which was mentioned before by Camila. I think with regard to the need to have adjectives. So these are qualities in a conceptual ontological sense, qualities of objects like color, and which also includes nouns, of course, but it should include most adjectives. So we have things like, well, roles in our approach are considered as concepts that classify. Sorry, I believe.
Bruno, try to wrap up, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you
can you hear me now?
Yeah, sure.
I had a problem with my headset.
No worries.
Okay.
Bruno, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you. I'm very sorry for this too much.
No problem at all. Try to make the most important, to run through the most important parts of this presentation, because we have to move on. Sorry, sure. I would love to have discussion, but we need to have a little room for discussion as well.
Agreed. Yeah, this is practically the final slide. So we have roles as concepts that classify objects. This allows to distinguish the role of professor from the class of professors, which is included in the agents category or its concept. So these are the differences with regard to conceptual objects. And to wrap up, in conclusion, very briefly, the BBT is, of course, an opportunity for ROSSIO to allow for the interoperability of its vocabularies, or the ROSSIO Thesaurus in this case, with other vocabularies developed within DARIAH or by DARIAH national representing entities. The ROSSIO Thesaurus already has mappings to most of the BBT, which should ensure some degree of interoperability with other thesauri, despite the different choices which I outlined previously. And there is, of course, a need for an official Portuguese language translation of the BBT. This would facilitate its adoption within Portugal and broadly, more broadly in the Portuguese-speaking community. This is something that perhaps we can provide via ROSSIO, and we will be glad to do so if you so desire. Thank you very much for your attention. So I'll stop sharing the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno. And for the very interesting mapping that you performed, and the differences and the same path you've been working in some cases, and also the critique and the missing things that you pointed out, like adjectives that or particles that we will be talking in the excuse me, in the next curation committee. So we'll move on to our next and last but not least speaker, Maria Papadopoulou. Maria is a member of the Listic Lab Cordillac Research Group on Terminology and Ontology and Knowledge Engineering Research Center in Laocheng University, China. Her research activities focus on thematic axes on having to do with digital humanities, semantic web applications for cultural heritage. And she will be delivering on, I'm sorry, I forgot my program. Here, my agenda. Helen, help me. The agenda, the title. Sorry about that. The meeting agenda.
Ontological.
Ontological definition of terms, examples from the cultural heritage terminology. Maria, the floor is yours.
Hi all, thank you Eleni for the introduction. Thanks for having me. Can you all see my screen now?
Maria is not in presentation mode. We don't see the presentation.
What about now?
Oh, yes, yes, okay.
Okay, so thanks again for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. My name is Maria Papadopoulou. I'm a digital humanist, but I come from classics and linguistics. I've been working in the field of knowledge representation for cultural heritage and digital humanities for several years now. My presentation starts from thesauri and focuses on ontologies. I'm going to talk about the ontological definition of terms, give some examples from the cultural heritage domain, and conclude with the advantages of giving ontological definitions to terms. What's in it for digital humanists and cultural heritage specialists? I'm a member of Condillac research group at the University of Savoie-Mont-Blanc, which is an international and interdisciplinary group of scholars interested in knowledge, language, and their interrelations. With regard to thesauri, our university has participated in two big European projects, Linked Heritage and Athena Plus. Both were multi-partner consortia and best practice networks. that aimed at contributing millions and millions of data to Europeana, the largest cultural heritage portal in EU. And at Condillac, we had developed an approach to knowledge and terminology management that combines the formal representation of terms via a shared ontology. It's called ontoterminology. And our technical contribution to both projects was to implement the TMP platform versions 1 and 2, Thesaurus Management Platform, based on the OTE, ontoterminology engine for Thesaurus. Just a few words about this project, even though both projects have now been closed. So the platform is no longer maintained. In accordance with the ISO standards on the Thesaurus, the OTE for Thesaurus provides functionalities for creating, editing, and mapping of thesauri. And based on the SCOS interchange format, it also allows importing and exporting thesauri. The architecture is based on the model view controller MVC type. It's developed in Java using the Sesame framework for processing and handling RDF data, and it works as a RESTful API. Each thesaurus and concept in the TMP2 can be accessed directly by the URIs, and it serves data in both HTML and JSON. The display layout of the thesauri on the user interface implements the double dimension of terminology, which I'm going to elaborate on in the coming slides. The control pane, the concept pane that I'm showing here of apron displays information about concepts arranged as broader and narrower, and allows to add notes. And the term pane displays the preferred term and the non-preferred terms for the selected thesaurus. According to the ISO standard on thesauri from 2011, today there is a demand for vocabularies that enable inferencing by machines. This is precisely what ontologies do. Ontology is a shared description of concepts and their relationships within a domain formally defined, which enables automated reasoning and inferencing of new knowledge. But what is the relationship between terminology, ontology, and thesauri? What do they have in common? The short answer to that is that all three are artifacts, are knowledge-based artifacts. They depend on concepts. A major premise in terminology science is that each term corresponds to a concept. So terminology as a science has a double dimension that relies both on language and knowledge. According to the ISO 1087 standard on terminology, the term is a verbal designation of a concept. It belongs to language, to the terminology of the domain. Concept is a plural knowledge based on a plurality of things. It is outside of language. It is extra-linguistic and belongs to the ontology of the domain. So the ontological definition of the term is a definition of the concept denoted by the term. This is not a new thought. It goes back to Aristotle and the Latin scholars of the Middle Ages, and is taken up by later philosophers such as Charles Sanders Peirce. And here I'm showing this idea as a triangular, tripartite ternary relation, a semiotic or semantic triangle, whereby the concept is the unit of thought related to the chair, verbalized by the term, the chair in this case, and the individual object that can be material, as it is in this case, a chair, or non-material. So what is a term? Is it a word? What's the relation with a word? Is it not a word? It is like and unlike a word. Term is a specialized lexical unit. It designates domain knowledge. So definition of terms, the definition in terminology emphasizes the ontological status of an object, what the denoted object is. According to Alain Rey, a major figure in linguistics and terminology and lexicography in France, chief editor of the Robert dictionaries, a good practice is to build Aristotelian definitions by genus proximum et differentia specifica. So not to define words, but terms organized in structured systems of concepts. Whereas in lexicography, what we do is emphasize on contextual meaning, which is succinctly put by the well-known English linguist J.R. Firth, very famous in the 50s. You shall know word by the company it keeps, which means that the word surfaces different meanings in different contexts. And Alain Rey again, the definition in lexicography concerns only the science of a natural language, does not focus on concepts and classes, but on word senses. So in ontoterminology, we put into relation the idea of term and concept. I'm taking the example of chiton. You see the object here. It's a Greek garment of classical times, of Greco-Roman times. The term chiton is a designation or verbalizes the concept of chiton, which can be formally defined via an ontology and represented via an ontological definition, represented by means of a descriptive enunciation, which can then be formalized in different and surface in different natural languages. This is not just a theoretical construct. It's also, we've also put it into practice by building a software called TEDI, Ontoterminology Editor, which provides formal definitions of concepts that we, and in concept systems that we build with it. For example, here you have the formal definition for chiton. You can export it in W3C compliant interchange formats such as OWL. Here is the definition based on the genus, which is garment, and the different specific differences, characteristics of this item which are unique to it, and then also visualize it as a description of the class, of the subclass chiton, which is a subclass of garment in Protégé Ontology Editor. So TEDI now is in its 2.5 version. And again, I'm showing you the idea of how to different terminologies or networks of terms in natural language A or B or C can be linked via a shared ontology. And TEDI has a number of editors to help the
we
user
have
do that.
to accelerate,
Okay.
please.
Okay. So everything is color-coded in TEDI. So to separate the two dimensions, concepts, objects on the one hand, and terms and proper names on the other. So here I'm showing you the term editor, the term list, and the definition of the garment exomis. Everything green is the concept because the term editor is in connection with the concept editor. So the concept editor provides the definition, and then you can you can click on this button, generate a pattern of definition, and then normalize it in natural language. And the definition will be of Aristotelian nature, genus plus differentiae. Of course, the system, if you organize the concepts following this logic, will automatically calculate the hypernyms and the hyponyms and the synonyms. You can add context and notes, which are very useful for humanists, and then set the status to preferred or dispreferred, or you can tag it any way you like. This is the concept editor. You can see that it's in connection with the term editor. It's important to say that not only ISA relations are conceptualized and structured and formally defined, but also any type of relation, associative, partitive, any type of relation can be accommodated and represented using this software. And also the object editor is very useful. Here I'm showing you the list of objects that we've entered for the project of ontoterminology of vases in order to represent the concepts and provide render into our format the metadata for the collection of vases of the archaic and classical period at the National Archaeological Institute in Athens. But the metadata we got from Beasley. So here is the list of objects. Francois vase is a particular object. It has a name. So this is it shows that the proper names editor in the terminological dimension, the blue dimension, is handy. And also objects, individuals can be anything. They can be places which can be assigned different attributes based on the geographic coordinates. And also another feature that is I find very useful is that the system helps you define different tags that come from standardized vocabularies of the W3C. I'm going to skip this slide just to say a few words about exports.
Maria, we really need to wrap up.
Okay, I'll finish in a second. Just to say that this is all possible by means of this vocabulary, the ontoterminology vocabulary, when translating from TEDI to protege, from TEDI ontoterminologies to protege ontologies. And this is the HTML for Greek garment, himation. Everything blue is the everything related to terms. And the equivalence here, because we build 3 different terminologies in Greek, French, and English, everything green is the concept. Here I'm showing you the project. This was part of the PhD project on representing the Qing concepts of the Ming and Qing Chinese pottery. And here again, showing you more clearly the HTML of the TEDI Onto Dictionary for Vases, showing you the one can access, have direct access to the objects, metadata. Just bear with me for 2 more slides. And this one is just to say that giving such definitions by genus and differentia is not a new thing. It has always been done by humanists. This is from Beasley archives. The definition that we found of the volute crater. The volute crater is a crater. That's the genus named after its handle. This can be our essential characteristic that we can enter into TEDI. So why define terms ontologically? If you need, and now I think at the age of linked open data, you definitely have to turn human readable terminologies into interoperable W3C terminologies. You can use this intuitive tool-assisted concept theory for terminology building, where term definitions can be checked via the TEDI platform for consistency and completeness, and then you can search on concepts, terms, and characteristics. And this is an approach that can help domain experts, not only because it's compatible with their way of thinking and it's easier to use, but it's also handy because this characteristics-based definition of concepts can provide a common basis for agreement on the characteristics by the experts on the domain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria, for this detailed and full of information presentation. We are actually on finishing time, but the organizers, DARIAH, has given us some minutes to make some kind of discussion, 10 minutes more. So we'll go through quickly on the questions and the comments from the chat, so that we can discuss if anything is of common interest. I see that Eleni posed to everyone a question, especially for ROSSIO, encouraged Bruno to make the specific suggestions. Yes, Eleni, but where? If that's the same question about adjectives that Camilla and Annika Annika hasn't spoken, but she has posed the same problem on particles and adjectives, where there's no specific facet about that. But anyway, it is good to have such suggestions or things that you think that are missing from in the BBTalk, so that we can follow the discussion. What I was meaning by addressing to my colleague Eleni Tsouloucha was that there is no, it's a matter of methodological principle. It's not an opposition. It's not something we need on a specific facet or top term to be changed. Anyway, we could discuss that in the next.
Can I interject? Sorry. We can always propose new facets as long as there's given enough documentation to back this option. I mean,
but
you don't need to just modify. You can create a new term. You can modify a term. You can delete
yes,
a
of
term.
course, you are
The
saying
same thing applies for facets. So if it's actually a necessity for many people and they cannot integrate the thesauri with the BBT because of that, then producing, like outlining a definition and giving out some backing information then allows the curation committee to reach a decision.
Eleni, I think that the terms are specific for archaeology and adjectives, adding quality and features. That's coming from two streams, and we need to discuss it on the curation committee, because it's not a particular facet or top term that needs to be changed or added. It is a matter of what kind of terms do we connect. Anyway, anything that you would do better to register in the BBTalk if you feel that you would like to continue this discussion there, and we can take this critique and see what we can do better in the themes of our next curation committee meeting. Then following, I see that both Blandine and Camilla have answered your questions concerning the named entities. Camilla has, Blandine has an issue there. Would you like to discuss on that, elaborate on that, Eleni?
I don't think I can do this like off the top of my head. So it is an issue that we have to discuss what they do with named entities.
Okay.
There are multiple options, and I don't really like any of them, but it's not my thesaurus. So one of the options would be to create a parallel hierarchy for named entities, but I'm not sure what this amounts to or why it's a good practice. And then there might be a need for a different thesaurus that connects to the one in BackTalks and to the one in BBT. I can't really propose a solution just like that.
Okay, as I'm reading, these are issues to be discussed in the next curation committee when we will have more time. I see that Camila is also asking about the way that, and she has the way that the DAI Thesaurus is presented in the DARIAH vocabs platform, and I think, and I see that Christos has offered to intervene. There are two ways, Camila, direct one to Matei or Xenia, and of course, Christos Georgis, who's our IT manager and supporting the whole system, and can sort of gather this whole material and forward it to Matei and Xenia. It is the Austrian Center for Digital Humanities who's responsible for the publication in the DARIAH vocabs. Of course, we have the BBT Federation, and we want the DAI to be also published there. So perhaps Christos might finally be your guy, but you can also contact directly Matei and Xenia. So, are there any questions left or comments that you want to discuss? If we need to discuss these issues at length, we should be doing next curation committee by Helen Katsiadakis, of course. It is, however, a great thing that they are raised and recorded here. So without any, to close the session and try to make a short list of our next steps. We haven't communicated in person for a long time due to the known circumstances of the COVID, and that made us not organize the face-to-face meeting of the curation committee. Still, as it was raised during the discussion, there are issues to be tackled, and it is uncertain when we will be able to conduct a face-to-face meeting, and perhaps these issues are delaying the work you are conducting in your local thesauri. So I need the community's response to that. We've put all the deadlines and all the dates and the obligations we have, and we decided that we have namely two opportunities. You might respond now, or we might raise a doodle. The one is to have the one option is that we have a virtual curation committee meeting, although it is very difficult to have 9 hours. Still, perhaps we need to do so because we cannot know how this will continue. And if the need is for immediate answers and immediate curation and to resolve these issues, then we can propose January. The other solution would be to try and expect the DARIAH annual event 2022 that will be held in Athens, Greece, with the hope that things will evolve smoothly and we will be able to meet. But that's way far until the end of May, beginning of June, and I don't know if we can wait till then. Especially people like colleagues and friends like Camila and Blandina, I would like your response. Do we need to have an urgent a close in-date curation committee, like something, a virtual one in January? I see Blandine nodding.
Yes, I think that problem of that issue of named entities is very important for us, because we are going to prepare our different facets, and so the issue is very important for us. So if we could have some help and well, about that issue, that would be great. And in January or in the beginning of February, that would be a good schedule. Yeah.
Can I suggest then that I mean, it's something that has come from both, well, from all of you, Blandine and Bruno and Camilla, that you need named entities. Maybe we could actually have this discussion prior to the meeting, so that we have a concrete proposal by then, in which case there will have to be rules sent around for people to fill in. Because,
that's an option.
I mean, we can't just go there and they decide prima vista on everything.
When we will, if we decide, so we decide that the named entities is important to us, and also adjectives and other features that both Camila and Annika and Bruno, from a different, more general perspective, have raised. So do we all agree that for the members of the committee and for those who might want to participate as, let's say, in a more
contributors,
new perspective, a fresh perspective,
as contributors, that we put out a doodle? If we decide that this is a good, I'm seeing Helen Katsiadakis is raising a hand, I will give her the floor immediately. If we decide that this is a good time around the second half of January, then we could vote and send out a doodle. Helen Katsiadakis.
Yes, first thing is, thank you. First thing is we agree on a day. But the other thing is to prepare for that meeting. And I agree with Eleni Zuluha that it is best to conduct an initial discussion in BBTalk and have all the ideas, or most of them, elaborated in there, so that the actual meeting is well prepared.
May I add something, Eleni? Sometimes maybe it's needed a discussion out of the BBTalk. If someone has examples and maybe an informal discussion just to get to the point of the name entities.
Okay,
and then,
a Google Doc. A Google Doc.
Yes, a Google Doc, or just anyone can contribute or has some idea about this, can discuss, and then to prepare something for the next meeting, just for the next curation committee meeting.
Okay, Google Doc is a better idea, maybe.
Thank you,
Yes.
Priscilla.
So maybe because we have to wrap this up, and I'm sorry to be jumping in right now. But since we have to wrap this up, we do have all your details, so we can pass around the doodle and an email.
Maybe you can have some minutes from this.
And there will be minutes as well. So
yes.
Thank you all again.
Do we have all the address of the participants? Or the
we do have them because they have signed in through the DARIAH Zoom thingy. So we will be contacting everyone right after this is over, right?
Okay.
So can I pass over to Francesca?
Yeah, sorry, I'm very sorry I have to ask you to wrap up. I see it's a very nice meeting, very lively meeting, so it's always a pity. But I have another meeting in 10 minutes and I need to prepare a bit. But of course, what I would like to remind you also is that if you would like to have another meeting soon with the same people, or if you think it's necessary to continue the discussion, I can also provide you another Zoom slot in the near future. It's no problem at all, really. So just let me know, and I will take care of it. And in terms of emails addresses, so I have your contacts because you registered, and with your permission, I can share them with Eleni and Helen so they can contact you further. So do you agree with this? I usually have to ask if anyone has anything against sharing contacts. Okay, I don't hear any no, so I will do that.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you.
Yeah, and
yes,
please. No, I'd just like to close, and if you want to say a final word, Helen.
No. Thank you all, and we'll be here. You'll be hearing from us soon concerning the curation committee and the next steps via the usual channels. Thank you all for participating.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Helen and Eleni.
Have a nice day. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.